Well, good afternoon, everybody. This is Randy Welsh, the Executive Director for the National Wilderness Stewardship Alliance, and we're glad that you've decided to join us for this Tuesday afternoon for another in a series of webinars that the National Wilderness Stewardship Alliance is bringing you about issues that affect wilderness stewardship around the country. I'm joined here today by Dave Cantrell, our Programs Committee Chair, who also longtime board member who also has been responsible for bringing these webinars to you. And our speakers today, we have Erin Collier and Brice Esplin, who have been the traveling trainers, one of the set of traveling trainers for Leave No Trace for the last couple of years. It's interesting that they've traveled to over 44 states. They've been involved in 400 to 500 different events around the country, and have probably put about 92,000 miles on their car as they've traveled around the country. And Faith Overall, who is the education and outreach specialist for Leave No Trace. So we're real excited to have them here with us today, where they're going to provide an update for us on the latest in Leave No Trace, what's new happening this year with some of their programs, with the traveling trainers around the country, their hotspot program, and then how you as a wilderness stewardship organization can get more involved in incorporating Leave No Trace into your practices in your local area. So we all know how important it is to manage our human impacts upon the land, and Leave No Trace is the approved method that we all want to try to accomplish and use in our daily lives as we hike and camp in the outdoors. So Erin, Brice, I'm going to turn the time over to you. I will note that everybody, we will be accepting comments at the end, or questions at the end of the presentation. If you would just use the question function in the GoToWebinar dialog box, just Dave and I will queue those questions up at the end of the program. We'll probably have about 30 to 40 minutes of presentation, and then we'll allow plenty of time for discussion at the end. So let's go ahead and turn it over to you. All right, there you go. Hopefully you got that, Erin and Brice?
Yep.
Yes.
So.
Okay, now, yep, you're sharing your screen.
All right. Cool. So we are super happy that you all have joined us today for our Leave No Trace Center for Outdoor Ethics webinar. We are very happy to be here. We've been able to work with the National Wilderness Stewardship Alliance a couple of times before, and we're really happy to kind of do it in this new format. Hopefully my thing will click. There we go. Cool. So we did do a little bit of introductions, but we still want to kind of reintroduce ourselves as well as give you our contact information. So my name is Erin, this is Brice, and we are the traveling trainer team that will be doing kind of the majority of the presentation, and then Faith Overall, who is our education and outreach coordinator, she'll be jumping in at the end to talk a little bit about her role, as well as ways that she's been able to use Leave No Trace, because she also is a volunteer with the Indian Peaks Wilderness Alliance, so she has a little bit of experience and insight with that. As Randy was saying, we have been on the road for 2 years. We have been able to do programs and education all across the country, and we are just one of 4 traveling trainer teams that provide this resource. We'll talk a little bit more about how you can kind of utilize the traveling trainers in your programs, but we are really happy to be here, really happy to be able to talk to you today. We want to give you a little bit of an overview of what we're going to be talking about in this webinar. So we're going to give you a background of Leave No Trace as well as provide some updates. We're going to talk a little bit about our current research initiatives. We're going to go through some teaching and training resources, some program building resources, and then just let you know some opportunities to get more involved. And then we're also going to have a pretty good chunk of time at the end to answer any questions. So if you have specific questions related to Leave No Trace and the 7 principles, or if you have questions related to how you can utilize it, how you can build your program, we will be happy to answer those towards the end.
Also, I just want to add that if you have the chat function open, we'll be placing links to just about every slide we're talking about, all those resources. There's also 3 handouts available for some resources that we'll talk about a little later in the presentation, and a couple polls as well. So just be on the lookout if it's something you're interested in. You should be able to click it and follow through pretty easily. And then if you're confused, ask us any questions later on down the line.
So as Brice kind of mentioned, we will be utilizing that poll function, and we want to quickly ask you a question now. So if you can kind of open up that poll area. We want to find out who you all are and what kind of capacity you work in the outdoors or you enjoy the outdoors, so that we're able to, kind of fine tune what we're talking about and provide you with the best resources for how you work in the outdoors. So spend a couple of seconds, just let us know if you are a volunteer, a land manager, or just an outdoor enthusiast, and we'll be able to, kind of fine tune what we're talking about to best serve you. So spend a couple seconds doing that. Cool. It looks like we've got
a pretty good majority there.
Yeah, we've got quite a few land managers, some volunteers, and some outdoor enthusiasts. We've got some other too, so we'll see. I think that we were kind of anticipating mostly volunteers and land managers, so hopefully we will have a lot of tools for you. But no matter what capacity you work in the outdoors or you enjoy the outdoors, Leave No Trace is relevant to you. It is something that can be utilized in whatever it is your role is. So we are hoping to, help you get a little bit more information and some more resources for that.
So before we dive into what we can offer you all in your capacities, we want to answer that question: what is Leave No Trace? Leave No Trace is a national nonprofit that seeks to protect the outdoors by educating visitors on how they can be minimally impactful and make their recreation sustainable, so that we're going to be able to enjoy these places and protect the animals, the plants that call them home for a long time, generations to come. The center does that by providing a framework for making good decisions when you go outdoors. So that means whatever situations you're faced with when you're doing outdoor recreation, you'll have the techniques, the tools, the knowledge, the skills to be as minimally impactful as possible, so that we're not going to affect that ecosystem, and we're going to be able to keep on enjoying it in our recreational pursuits. It's really important to realize that we do this by providing mostly education and tools to land managers and volunteers, so that they can really keep this and communicate with visitors through effective signage, through things like good social media posts, like good face-to-face interactions, and also just those activities that promote minimum impact practices.
We want to give you a little bit of update on what Leave No Trace looks like today. We just last year passed our 25th anniversary as an independent nonprofit, and we have grown quite a bit in those 25 years. We initially started very focused in the backcountry and in wilderness areas, and we know now that about 85% of all outdoor recreation happens in the front country. So we have sort of adjusted our message and our approach to not focus solely on backcountry areas, but to bring Leave No Trace into the front country as well, and to really provide education for everyone who's going outdoors, no matter what it is they're doing or how it is they're enjoying their outdoor spaces, as well as provide tools for those who work in the outdoors so that they can continue to spread that message and reach their visitors. We have 2 kind of key pillar initiatives that help us to achieve this. The first of those is Leave No Trace for Every Kid. And in this program, it's really what it sounds like. We want to provide Leave No Trace education for every kid who is getting outdoors. So we work with summer camps, schools, all different sorts of youth programs to help foster that love of nature in the kids that are getting outdoors, and also help them understand how they can protect those places. And then our second key initiative that is a little bit more relevant to you all is Leave No Trace in Every Park. And Leave No Trace in Every Park focuses on building a Leave No Trace program in every park and protected area across the country. So that is, anything from city parks to national parks, wilderness areas, everything in between. We want to provide tools for land managers and volunteers to build their own Leave No Trace program, so that wherever visitors are getting outdoors, they're having the opportunity to learn about minimizing their impact as well.
So what ways do we accomplish that goal? A lot of them come from all of these type of methods right here. You can see in the bottom left of this slide, the traveling trainers, Erin and I, we're one of many arms of ways that Leave No Trace reaches and educates people. In the middle right-hand side, a lot of our volunteers, some of you all, actually 20% of all of you who responded to that poll, are land management agency partners up in the top left, 53% of you listening right now. So it's really awesome that you all are, our allies in promoting this message and educating visitors on how they can protect these outdoor spaces for the long term. We know we're making a lot more people and not necessarily a lot more land, so every way we can reach people is just as important as the others.
The kind of backbone of all of this education is our 7 principles. And we probably have, varying levels of familiarity with the 7 principles, but these are really the foundation of all of our education. They are the 7 ways that we and our visitors can minimize our impacts in any outdoor spaces. And there's kind of a lot that is going on with all of these 7 principles. They have been adapted for different activities as well. So there's 7 principles specifically for rock climbing or specifically for fishing. And these are things that are available on our website if you have very specific visitors that you're trying to reach, or you yourself do a specific activity. And we're not going to spend too much time talking about these 7 principles. We just want to, make sure that everyone is kind of on that same page, that these are really the backbone of all of this educational work and the foundation of really everything that we're doing to teach folks how to minimize their impact.
In addition to the 7 principles, in the last couple of years, we've come out with some social media guidance. A lot of our outdoor spaces, I'm sure anecdotally, we can think about areas that we know have been somewhat impacted by social media, especially some of the high capacity places through Instagram or Facebook. And so we've come up with some guidance on ways we can avoid that and treat these places well, and so that they're going to be sustainably recreated on. We don't have a ton of research at the moment. We're in pursuits right now of looking for some of that research and ways we can learn more about how social media affects the outdoors. But here are some things we can do to make sure that we're protecting those outdoor spaces through social media. This is especially important for a lot of you volunteers or land managers who may, in your work capacities or volunteer capacities, interact with visitors through social media or even in your own. And some of these things are to tag thoughtfully, be careful of what our pictures or video portrays, to work education into our posts, giving back to places, and then not using Leave No Trace for shaming and really putting down those folks who are doing less than Leave No Trace practices. We're all about calling people in, not calling them out, and education is the answer for that. We won't spend a ton of time on these minutia details. We mostly want to give you all the resources you can be successful in learning more and implementing them in your capacities as volunteers or land managers.
All right, so now that we kind of have a little bit of a background on Leave No Trace, we want to talk about why. Why is it important to build a Leave No Trace program, to incorporate it into the work that you do? Why is it important to teach visitors about Leave No Trace? Why is it important for us to practice it ourselves? I am sure that no matter what capacity you work in, you see recreation-related impacts. They are occurring, everywhere, any outdoor space, from our city parks to our wilderness areas. And majority of these recreation-related impacts happen because visitors are unaware, they are misinformed, they're uninformed. These things happen unintentionally. And by educating visitors and educating ourselves, we can really mitigate and minimize these impacts. Our research shows that 9 out of 10 outdoor recreationists do not have Leave No Trace education. They don't have the skills and the knowledge to minimize their impacts, or even really to know what impacts they are causing. So by building in Leave No Trace to our programs, by providing that education, we are empowering our visitors to minimize their impacts, to protect the places that we love, that they love, and we are working to keep these places healthy for the long term.
The other huge reason why this all matters and why Leave No Trace is important to our public lands is the sheer volume of folks going outside. This graph here is 2018 data, but what it shows is that to our federal and state land management agencies, we had over 1.8 billion with a B visits to our outdoor spaces. That's a lot of international visitors, a lot of repeat visits as well, and that's a ton of people. If we include municipal and city parks to this number, that jumps up to 12 billion per year. And so those are cumulative impacts with cumulative use. The more people we see out there, the more potential there is for impact. And so what Leave No Trace tries to do is to curb that additional impact, to change that impact curve so that we can still have all these folks going outdoors, but they're doing it sustainably and responsibly so that even with a lot of growth that we're seeing in these visitation numbers, we can be less impactful overall. A lot of places such as Death Valley are seeing a 20% increase in one single year, or Rocky Mountain National Park with over a 40% increase in a 5-year time period. So we're seeing huge jumps in outdoor recreation, and that's great. We're getting more steward potential. We're getting more people enjoying the benefits of nature, but we want to make sure that they're educated at the same time.
So we're going to give you a little bit of a pop quiz now. Again, this is going to be in the poll. So our pop quiz, why do people go outdoors? To mess it up, to follow rules, or to enjoy the outdoors? And so far, I think 100% of you are on track. Yeah, exactly. I think a lot of times in our, in our roles, it can feel sometimes we're seeing lots of impacts occurring and we're very connected to these places. So these impacts can kind of weigh on us, and it can feel like, maybe our visitors are purposefully messing these places up or purposely causing these impacts. But the reason that people are coming to these outdoor spaces is just to enjoy nature and to be outdoors. They're not coming to purposely mess things up. They're also not really coming to follow rules. They're coming to kind of escape those kinds of things. So we want to give people the benefit of the doubt, and we also want to give them the tools to protect places because they are there to enjoy these areas. They're there because they see the value in them. And by providing the opportunity for education, we empower them to, make more Leave No Trace choices and protect the places that we all love to enjoy. We have a few tools that we can utilize to minimize impacts, to educate visitors, to really protect these places. We call these the 3 E's. The first one is education, and this is really where Leave No Trace lives. We focus on this education pillar, and this is all of the outreach that we do, all of the stewardship, all of our programs, our signage, any material that we're putting online or in visitor centers, places like that. All of this education helps to influence behavior and to educate our visitors on how they can leave no trace. Another tool we have is enforcement. So these are more things like fines or our rules and regulations. And then we also have engineering, which is how we are setting up areas, where we're putting trash cans, how we're building trails, things like that. And all 3 of these are important components to think about when we're trying to minimize recreation-related impacts. But we really want to focus on this education piece today and give you the tools to really build out this pillar of your program, to really empower you all to create a large, comprehensive education program so that maybe these other 2 pieces you have to spend less time, energy, money, and manpower on because they can be maybe a little bit more intensive and expensive to spend resources on those 2.
Sorry, real quick, Wig. Oh, there it goes, perfect. So we want to talk about what's needed to influence behavior, or what's important when we're interacting with visitors. This is extremely beneficial to know if you're in a land manager or volunteer capacity and working with visitors one-on-one pretty often, or in our messaging and signage. So most visitors, when we go outside, remember that 9 of 10 number, don't have that leave no trace or minimum impact knowledge. They also don't have a basic understanding of the natural world around us. They don't understand how how water diversion and erosion works. They don't understand how a food web works. And then the second piece is a lot of visitors don't understand the human consequences or human impacts associated with that natural world or those natural systems. So a lot of visitors don't realize that if they're doing their dishes or bathing in the stream, it could change the pH level of that water and contaminate it. They don't realize that by feeding wildlife all the time, maybe we're habituating them to humans. And so it's important to realize that while we're interacting with folks or making messaging for them, that we're connecting these two gaps in knowledge. We're giving them the information to make the right choice. And our mythical third step in this puzzle here, if we're able to give people the number one and number two information for any impact, they're going to become Leave No Trace stewards. They're going to be effectively educated to know how they can protect that outdoor space. And so that's what our aim is going to be with a lot of these resources we'll provide you with now.
So how do we then do that? How do we connect those dots? How do we build that education pillar? We have a lot of resources that are specifically created for volunteers, for land managers, or even just for outdoor enthusiasts to help to spread this message and to help connect those dots and build out those programs. The first kind of section of this is our research. We are a science-based organization, which means that everything that we're putting out, all of the recommendations that we have or the practices that we're asking visitors to do, they come from that science and research. So we aren't just kind of providing arbitrary guidance. It is based on actual data, looking at how impacts occur and what is the best method for curbing those impacts. In this kind of science and research realm, we have a lot of tools to help you utilize that research and kind of use it as an educational tool and also as a tool for deciding how to manage areas. The tool that I want to kind of make you all aware of is our Leave No Trace focused research summary. This summary goes through research findings from 2011 to 2018, so about a decade's worth of research. And it summarizes a bunch of different Leave No Trace related studies. And in this summary, it pulls out some kind of key findings from each of these research studies, as well as some management implications. So this summary includes many different studies. This one is shown on your screen right now is just one of them. This one looked at Leave No Trace behavior in national parks. And some of the things that were found from this one, this kind of first box up here, 55% of visitors responded that it was very appropriate to leave food scraps behind as a food source for animals. I'm sure that for many of you, this is an impact that you all see, wildlife becoming food habituated. And this research shows us that 55% of those visitors didn't think this was even an impact. They thought they were doing the right thing. They thought that they were, actually being good stewards by helping that wildlife. So this is a way that we can really fine tune our education and our messaging based on what kind of gaps we know visitors maybe have in their understanding, what misinformation they're working with, and we can be a lot more effective with our messaging. Some of the management implications are that park visitors need to understand why certain Leave No Trace practices are being asked of them, and they also need to understand that those practices are effective. If they know why they're being asked to do something and why that thing is effective, their likelihood of doing that practice significantly increases. So this is just one example from this research summary, and there are many studies in there. Each of them pull out these key findings and these management implications. This is a free resource on our website. We also, I believe, just have sent a link out to this in the chat function, so you can click that link if you want to just kind of already save this.
It'll also be a handout as well, so you
Yes.
should be able to download it on your sidebar
Yes.
At any point.
Yeah, but this is just one tool to help you really kind of stay updated on the research that we have done in the last decade and see how that research can be utilized in the work that you all are doing.
So we want to shed a little insight now into our teaching and training resources, especially if a lot of you are able to interact with visitors or lead programs or interpretive events often. These are some of the things that we have available for your use so that you can educate those 9 out of 10 visitors on how they can protect our outdoor spaces. The first of which is our traveling trainers, just like Erin and I. The traveling trainers do free education all across the country all year long, and we try to make it to every state in the United States and give a lot of information for how you can incorporate the 7 principles. We'll talk about effective communication in some more intensive workshops. We'll give a lot of activities and guidance on how you can teach others in regular capacities. We do have a limited availability just because there are a lot of requests, but you can find the request to visit link on our website and see if you can have some traveling trainers coming through your areas. There are currently 4 teams that travel the country, and we love to work with new groups all the time and do a staff training or maybe a big function that usually happens on your park or protected area. Any way we can work with you, we want to strive to be available. We also have a lot of online learning options. Faith will talk a little bit more about our online awareness workshop, but we also have a Master Educator Refresher course. These are some online options that are available just at a single click. You can maybe get your whole organization or just a couple people caught up on the basics of Leave No Trace and how they can work to incorporate this into their daily work. These offerings are being expanded all the time as well. We also have tons of Leave No Trace activities. Leave No Trace is really effective in experiential, hands-on, fun, interactive learning. So anytime we can, and just about every workshop we give, with exception to maybe a webinar, we try to get people up, moving, and learning those 7 principles or effective communication strategies through games and activities, both for kids and adults. We have tons available for free on our website, but we also have some booklets that you can purchase that have hundreds of activities. They include the instructions, the handouts, the materials you might need to make sure those function well. But they're a huge resource if you're doing interpretive or regular programming, and how you can make a culture of Leave No Trace and an overall outdoor ethic that we can build with everyone. We also have an online video library. The Leave No Trace Center YouTube channel has over 400 videos of a lot of camping or hiking specific minimum impact practices, all sorts of ways that you can learn more about how to be minimally impactful and share that to a broader audience. By maybe just copying a link and sharing it through your channels, you can educate people on very specific items or things maybe they didn't know. Post it to your website, whatever it may be, so that you can have another outlet for engaging folks and preparing them to take care of your outdoor space. We also have in-person training all across the country, anywhere from a partial 30-minute to a full-day awareness workshop, which this course technically counts as, and clear up to our multi-day in-person train the trainer style of courses, our trainer course and our master educator course. These 2 courses are multi-day in the field courses in which you can learn a ton about Leave No Trace and specifically how to teach Leave No Trace to the people you work with regularly. These are great courses, and you can find some of them listed on our website, as well as some of our master educator course providers list which options they have taking place throughout the year.
So in addition to research and teaching and training resources, we also have specific resources for building your educational program, your Leave No Trace program on site in really a comprehensive way. The first and kind of most central piece of this is our online site assessment tool. This rubric is a way that you can really kind of understand where you're starting from with your Leave No Trace or minimum impact program, and then where you have opportunities to grow. It is a way that you can kind of give yourself a score and then see where it is you want to and where it is you want to improve. Some of the different components of this are staff and volunteer training, making sure that our staff and volunteers are aware of Leave No Trace, understand it, and then are able to kind of speak from a place of understanding to visitors or in whatever role they have. Training opportunities, that's how often we're providing opportunities for staff, volunteers, and partners to become trained in Leave No Trace. On-site messaging, education materials, and online information. These components all deal with the kind of outreach materials that we're creating. How are we incorporating Leave No Trace into our social media or onto our website? If we have maps or different kinds of brochures we're giving out to the public How are we including minimum impact information there? And then on-site, how are we including it in our signage or any kind of information we're providing to visitors? Programs are specifically our interpretive programs, campfire programs, tours, talks, things that we're giving our visitors, and ways that we can build this messaging in there. Youth focus is any kind of youth education we do, maybe a junior ranger program or field trips that we provide. And then partnerships focuses on the partners and the stakeholders that we work with in our outdoor area, and how much minimum impact information we're providing them with, and how much we're setting them up for success for kind of creating this very cultural Leave No Trace program, and kind of just working it into everything it is that we're doing. Again, this is a tool that is free to use. You can kind of see where your starting point is and see where you want to grow. And then as you're working through that growth, we have 2 additional tools. The first of them is a step-by-step implementation guide. So both of these work in conjunction with that rubric. And this step-by-step implementation guide lines out different phases. There are 4 phases in here for helping you build and improve on your score on that site assessment tool. So it has checklists, it has resources, it has a guide to really line out ways that you can improve your education and your outreach on site. And then we also have a startup workbook. This specifically deals with phase 1 of implementation. It has worksheets, discussion guides, all different kinds of tools to really lay that foundation from which you can continue to grow. These are free tools, and we really encourage you to utilize them because it really is helpful to kind of have that line out of ways that we can work to build Leave No Trace into all different aspects of our program, because that's really how we can, really help to minimize the impacts in these areas by building it into all these different areas, so that no matter where visitors are going, no matter what type of trip they're taking, they're learning how they can protect these places and be great stewards of them.
Both these documents should be included as PDFs on your attachments there, so you should be able to download them as handouts at any point. And then I just linked the site assessment tool in the comments as well, if you want to do it for your park or protected area.
The last component of this is our hotspot program. This is the comprehensive program where we go and visit areas and work very closely with them to build their program and to kind of implement the different pieces of this rubric. These are all nomination based, so anyone can nominate their area as a hotspot. This is a look at the 2020 hotspots. They've already been selected. We've actually already had a couple of them. Brice and I were in Phoenix last week working on a hotspot with the Arizona Game and Fish. But these are a really awesome tool if you're interested in really working to fine tune and build your program. The nominations for 2021 will be open in the next few months, so you can kind of keep an eye on that. If you are interested in having a team out to kind of help build these programs, we do about 6 days worth of outreach events, trainings, meetings to really kind of talk through all of these things, and you get to work a little bit more closely with the center on building your program. But even if you're not able to become a hotspot, these other tools still help you to kind of do that work and really build a comprehensive way to educate our visitors. We are really hoping that you utilize a lot of these resources. The best way to get involved is really just to join us and to, utilize all of these tools in whatever way works best for you and your role in your area, and to kind of help us understand a little bit more about what it looks like from a volunteer perspective and to provide additional resources. I'm going to throw it to Faith overall. Again, she is our education and outreach coordinator for Leave No Trace, as well as a volunteer for the Indian Peaks Wilderness Alliance, and she'll have a little bit more to kind of talk about based on her role. And I'll go ahead and throw it to Faith, if you're ready, Faith.
Yep, thank you, Erin and Brice. As Erin said, I am the Leave No Trace Center's education and outreach coordinator, but am also a volunteer with the Indian Peaks Wilderness Alliance. I'm one of their summer patrol volunteers, and one of our main roles as summer patrol volunteers is to be on the trails, interacting with visitors, and of course doing some visitor education. A big part of that for us is helping the Forest Service out and really encouraging people to be following the local regulations. A lot of the same science and practices that inform those regulations are what inform the Leave No Trace principles and a lot of the Leave No Trace practices. So when I'm on the trail, that is kind of my default, is to talk to people about Leave No Trace and help them understand the different reasons why we encourage those practices and why we encourage those regulations. So we find that, you know, if you help a visitor understand the actual impacts that they're having on the ground, then they will tend to, you know, maybe change their behaviors and follow some of those regulations a little bit more. So we're definitely constantly incorporating Leave No Trace into our visitor contacts as part of my role with IPWA. So the center, as Erin and Brice mentioned, has a ton of great resources that you all can pretty easily incorporate into the work that you're doing. I know many wilderness stewardship groups are doing a lot of trail work. And so when you're somebody who's working in the outdoor space, it's just as important for you to kind of practice Leave No Trace as you would if you were just out there, you know, enjoying a hike. So the center has developed some information that is specific to those who are specifically doing trail work type projects. And so this Leave No Trace for the outdoor workplace, it has each of the 7 principles and then some guidance that's specifically tailored to when you're working in the outdoors for each of those principles. You can go to the next one. If your group is interested in having someone come and do some training or getting some Leave No Trace training for your group, as Erin and Brice mentioned, the traveling trainers are a great way to do that. But we also have our volunteer state advocates. They're the lead volunteer in their state for Leave No Trace and kind of a point of contact for anyone who's looking for training or outreach. And so they're a great resource to contact if you want to have somebody come do something for your group. They can do, you know, just more of a general Leave No Trace awareness workshop, something like this, maybe something tailored to your specific area, or they can do something more about effective communication and really how you convey Leave No Trace to visitors. We also have our online awareness course. This is a free resource. It takes maybe an hour to complete. And if you don't have the capacity to incorporate, you know, a more formal training into your volunteer or staff training, this can be a really great resource that you can have everyone do. Like I said, it takes about an hour. It really goes over what the center is, what our mission is, what are recreation-related impacts, and then, of course, what are the practices behind the 7 principles that help us kind of mitigate those. So a free resource that's easy for everyone to access and definitely a great one to be aware of. And it's in the middle of a big overhaul right now, so it'll be even more in depth pretty soon, which is great. It's definitely going to be an even better resource once we're done with that. So another thing that we have is our community partner program. We work with about 400 to 500 different organizations, including a lot of nonprofits, small businesses, guides and outfitters, things like that, who really want to incorporate Leave No Trace into everything that they're doing. These are dues paying partnerships. They start at about $150, but we find that the main benefit for people is really being aligned with the Leave No Trace movement, and then also being able to use the logo and use all the language of Leave No Trace, including those 7 principles, and embed it into what they're doing. This is a program that I specifically oversee. So if you have any questions or are interested in learning more about kind of what are the resources available to community partners, definitely feel free to reach out to me. all the benefits of partnership are really tied to helping you incorporate Leave No Trace into what you're doing and really strengthen your Leave No Trace educational efforts. We also have lots of other online resources, and working in our education department here, I work with a lot of those resources. So if you're interested in learning more about anything Erin and Brice talked about or I talked about, of course, feel free to reach out.
Awesome.
All right, so we just threw a lot of information at you, a lot of resources, and we want to give you an opportunity to ask any specific questions, to ask for clarifications on anything. So feel free to, I believe, type your questions into the question field, and we will do the best we can to answer anything that comes up.
So we do have one question we can start off with. So I'll read it for the group since I'm probably the only one that can see it.
I think Randy.
Oh, Randy, are you going to read out the questions there?
Randy,
we can't.
Oh, there you go.
There it goes.
I want to reiterate to our audience to use the question function to type in your questions for Brice and Erin and for Faith, and then we will get them queued up. So, Erin and Brice, so are there any tips on how to evaluate whether responsible recreation behavior is modified in the future after doing visitor education in the field? So what are the resources that are available for doing evaluation of the success of Leave No Trace efforts?
Yeah, absolutely. We do have a community science program that we utilize to kind of measure the success of these things. I believe that actually the next webinar, Mark Eller, who is another member of our staff, will be on a panel about citizen science and talking a little bit more about that program, which is why we didn't really kind of work it into this. But that's one tool to utilize to kind of figure out where your foundation is and then reevaluate as you're going forward. But anytime that we can even utilize just anecdotal evidence to see how recreation-related impacts are changing, something that there hasn't been really any comprehensive research on so far. It's something that our staff is working on trying to build more research around, just in how much that education is affecting impacts. But we have seen, specifically with our hotspot programs, we've seen positive changes over time in those areas, building that kind of comprehensive education program, and then seeing success with impacts being minimized and with visitors just being more informed in how they're impacting areas and how they can minimize those.
In addition, something we talk about in our effective communication workshops pretty often is that, we let science inform our behaviors as land managers and volunteers as well. And we know that one of the most effective things we can do, based on that research and some of the studies that already exist, is that uniformed volunteer or land manager presence. Those face-to-face interactions with someone in that capacity, whether it be an educational event or even just one-on-one chat about an impact that may be happening, is one of the most effective things we can do, sometimes even more so than signage or other programming options as well. So some of that is definitely at your hands, at your discretion as well, and linked on the research section of our website. But that is a great question and something we know can be effective, and something that we, paired with that community science program, are keen to learn more about.
So if somebody was interested in your Train the Trainer sessions or the Master Educator sessions, where would they find that information out? And how many sessions do you typically put on a year?
Yeah, so on our website, there is an area that is kind of specifically for any of those events that are happening. So you can look state by state and see what trainings are happening in your state. And you can also kind of look just overall and see what is going on. The Train the Trainer, the kind of 2-day trainer course, those happen more often because it's a little bit easier for folks to put on. And because we're a pretty small staff, we only have about 20 people who work directly for Leave No Trace. majority of those trainings are put on by, just people in different communities. So people who have gone to their own master educator courses and are equipped with the ability to put on those trainer courses. So they happen all over the country, and we try to put as many of them as we can on the website so that folks can see when they're happening. The master educator courses, those 5-day ones, they happen a little bit less often just because they are more comprehensive, and they are put on by different providers across the country. So there are many different providers from like the Appalachian Mountain Club, Knowles is a provider, and all of those ones are on the website so you can see when they're happening. They're kind of scattered around the country. We do also have a scholarship program for the master educator courses because they can be a little bit more costly as they're a 5-day course. And the scholarship, I believe, is still currently open. We just, we gave out we do it a couple times a year. We gave out, I think, our first round of scholarships, but that is another option for being able to attend those trainings. And that's something that's on the website as well, just in that kind of training area under master educator courses.
And I can add too, for any of our trainings, like if you have an actual group that is looking to maybe go through a trainer course, we do have state advocates could run something like that. Also, we have a database with those educators. So if there's not a course on the website that your large group can take part in, we can help connect you with somebody else who might be able to put something on for you.
All right, great. So Donna has asked, most of the Leave No Trace materials are based on habitat types or specific activities. Has there been discussion or thought about doing a Leave No Trace for wilderness specifically because of the different rules and regulations that are engaged in wilderness systems?
Yeah, that's a great question because, wilderness, even that word or that concept can be, the legal definition, big W wilderness can be very different for most folks, or they maybe aren't even aware of what those differences entail. We don't have a ton of specific resources dedicated just to wilderness, but by reaching people with the basic Leave No Trace information, that framework for making good decisions, even if we're reaching them in city parks and things, they should be able to transfer that information to a wilderness aspect. We do work very often with groups, land managers, in developing messaging specific for wilderness. One thing we don't condone is just slapping the 7 principles on a sign at a trailhead and calling your job done. By making specific messaging in the places people are already going, whether it be on websites or signs at the trailheads, and making it relevant to the impacts that are happening to those areas, we can be all the more effective in how we're reaching these folks with that information. So that's why we usually try to have those one-on-one back and forth with whoever controls that message, the land managers or volunteers, and getting the right information to visitors where they need it, rather than just making a blanket hang tag for wilderness that tries to cover every little detail. We try to approach it from that angle.
We do have specific information for backcountry areas though, so it is rather than just wilderness areas, it's kind of any backcountry travel. So it focuses more on what to do when there are no facilities, there are no resources, and how to best handle those backcountry situations. So I think that's probably the closest thing to what you're describing. But yeah, that is something we can kind of communicate back, that it's maybe a potential for something to explore going forward.
Okay. Dave, did you have any questions?
It's a hard one to phrase, but there were 2 slides which suggest that a lot of your people, a lot of visitors, a lot of poll takers think they know more than they do. And I've run into this on the trail a few times from people who are quite confident about LNT principles and quite wrong. Do you have any advice on how to work with people who are sure they are expert, but whose behavior says they are not?
Yeah, absolutely. We run into that all the time in our work as well, especially because a lot of people associate Leave No Trace just with litter and think as long as they're packing everything out, then they're doing all of it, and don't realize that there are a lot of different nuances. There's a lot of other components in it. Something that we like to do, especially when we're kind of doing outreach, is to have some kind of trivia that can maybe throw people off and help them understand, oh, maybe I don't know the answer to this question, so I probably don't know everything. I have more to learn. That can be done on social media or in, on different kinds of communication, so that people are kind of faced with what they don't know and then maybe take a step back and realize that there's more to learn. And that's kind of one approach to doing that, but also just really kind of putting the why behind the things we're asking folks to do, because then they can, that can really help them to understand that they're being asked to do these things because of all of these whys, all of these reasons, and that can kind of fill in a lot of the gaps for the things that they don't know.
Yeah, so to summarize, we a lot of times try to lead in with a misconception that opens the door and brings people in. And then if we're defining anything we're asking visitors to do with that why, they're more likely to apply that to other situations down the road, and maybe try to expand that to just their one finite view of what that impact may be, or if they don't even realize it's an impact. But great question. That slide is pretty funny because it's 55%, think that feeding wildlife is okay, and then 60% say that they're extremely awesome at Leave No Trace. And those same groups, those are conflicting.
Yeah, there's some overlap there.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, last chance for questions to our audience. And in the meantime, Erin and Brice, thank you so much. Very excellent presentation. Wonderful slides. Really well done.
We have one little wrap up as well for our slide. We'll just advance it real quick.
Yeah, and if you still have questions, feel free to type them in, but we just want to give you a little bit of a recap and kind of, outline those ways we talked about to get more involved, utilize those research findings, make sure that you head into the chat function and you can download all of those resources, you can bookmark them so that you're able to locate them and utilize them. Adopt teaching resources, go ahead and download those free activities and incorporate them however you can. Train others either in, facilitating staff trainings or volunteer trainings, or just helping other people to understand, just the people you get outdoors with, understand how they can minimize their impacts. Using that online assessment to assess your current program, and then implementing some more initiatives based on where you have room to grow. You can contact your state advocate, you can become a partner, and then kind of a final thing is signing up for the resource, which is our monthly newsletter. You can sign up on our website, and then you're kind of in the loop of new things that are happening, new events that might be happening near you, updated research, all different kinds of ways to kind of stay in the loop and stay involved. And we really appreciate you spending your afternoon, listening to us, and we really encourage you to utilize these resources because we all have a vested interest in protecting these places, and we know that you are doing awesome work on the ground in all of the areas that you work, and we hope that you're able to, utilize this and do even more awesome stuff, especially as we approach the kind of summer season, the maybe busy season for all the places that you work.
Yeah, well, Erin and Brice, we want to thank you again. You are the first line of defense for the protection of the outdoors, and so we really appreciate all your efforts and your work. And Faith, thank you too for all your outreach and the programs that you're running at Leave No Trace. I would mention to our audience that our next webinar is on April 14th, also at 1 o'clock Mountain Time. We'll have the Great Old Broads for Wilderness on. They'll be talking about balancing advocacy and stewardship to protect areas, and we'll be looking specifically at the Great Old Broads model for doing that. So we welcome everybody to come and participate with us next month. So again, Erin, Brice, Faith, thanks so much. We appreciate it. From MWSA, Randy Welsh and Dave Cantrell signing off. Thank you all for joining us today. This session has been recorded and it will be on our website probably within the next week. So thanks everybody. We'll see you next time.